I had a half dozen new friends, and little did I know what was going to come about with those people in the next, 48 hours. But an absolutely phenomenal experience and worth every ounce of the 9-hour drive to and the 9-hour drive home.
Hey, welcome to the Man Up Podcast. I'm your host today, Terry Gwalding. Man, I'm so excited for our audience to get to know my two guests today. I've got Devane Prince, reigning from Carmel, Illinois, brother from another mother. And then I've got Mr. Jeff Valder, all the way from the Cornhusker State, that's joining us today. And you guys, this is going to be a treat for everyone listening. Guys, just welcome to the show. I'm excited you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
glad
thanks
to be
for having
here.
me.
Wow, a lot of ground to cover today. Pretty neat. We all have a shared experience on this on the show today, from the fact that we were all at the Man Up Adventure Camp last year. I think we're all going this year, and we're excited about that. And so we're going to kind of pull the curtains back a little bit and maybe share some of those experiences, a little bit of that journey for people maybe that are listening for the first time. To see if we can answer some of those questions, check some of those boxes to see more guys kind of come to camp this year, because it was pretty impactful for us, and, trying to communicate all that in words. That's going to be our goal today. But before we get going, let's hear just a little bit about, your guys' individual journey, a little bit about what you do, kind of where you're at in life, your career, your family, summarize all that, and kind of introduce yourself to our audience. Jeff, you want to go first? Jeff, are you still with us?
The one fail, if we need to restart this here, I'm sitting here on mute, and I'm like talking. I'm like, oh, this is great.
It was probably really good, too.
Yes. Yeah.
I bet you Shane can edit that. It's going to be good.
I was motivated. Was you motivated, Devane?
I was ready to run through this wall.
I'm tearing up over here.
So, Jeff Valder, I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was born in Nebraska, raised a Husker fan, moved to California when my mom got remarried when I was a kid. Still stayed a Husker fan. Came back here, went to school. My dad was always back here. This is the very abridged version. My dad was always back here. I went to the University of Nebraska, where I met my tremendous wife, Claire. And she's from here. And we make this home. It's a great town. If you're ever passing through, which is usually what most people are like, oh, yeah, I've driven through Lincoln. There's actually it's one of the best kept secrets in the United States. So, and I have the tremendous privilege about 15 months ago, I started my own coaching practice. So I coach individuals on performance and personal development. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done vocationally. And I've done some really, what I think is cool stuff. But just getting to help people, just walk alongside people that are, getting stuck, running into some walls. And we figure out what's going on with that, what the goal is, what's in the way, and then we define an action plan to get around it.
Wow. I bet that is incredibly rewarding.
It is absolutely the biggest reward I've ever gotten in my life. That's for sure. So it's pretty cool stuff.
So you said hidden gem, I think was what you were trying to say for Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm thinking beef and Cornhuskers. Why should we come to Nebraska again?
Well, there is plenty of beef and plenty of Cornhuskers, but things that most people don't know about Lincoln, Nebraska is that, of course, we've got the University of Nebraska. So when you think Cornhuskers, that's 4 miles from where I am standing right now. But, if you're a Husker fan, if you're a sports fan, the Nebraska football experience is not for me, but it is for a lot of people, and it's pretty unique. But also in Lincoln, we are a resettlement community that I believe it is Lutheran Social Services. So there's a lot of refugees that have come from all over the world to our town, to our community. And the value that they add is just absolutely tremendous. There's restaurants, there's great food, there's, smaller shops and stuff like that. And it's not like a huge part of our population, but we do have some phenomenal restaurants. My wife and I both love to eat. That's like we go out, we eat out. That's our kind of our discretionary spending really goes that direction. And it's just a cool town. It's a small town, about 300,000 people. It's got a small town feel, but big enough to have some amenities of, restaurants and concerts. We've got an arena. We get some, good events here. But it doesn't have the crime statistics or the cost of living that you might find in other more populous parts of the country. So it's a good spot. It's cold today. It's like 25 right now or 27, but overall it's a pretty cool place to be.
Well, glad to call it home. You've sold me. I'm coming to Lincoln and
Sweet.
Let you take me out for a steak.
Yeah. Do you have a spot on your couch for me? Or?
I do. We'll figure it out. I know that you can sleep outside because I've seen that firsthand. So we'll make it happen.
That is not my first choice.
Devane,
we'll take care of you, Devane.
Right. Give us a little bit of your backstory, Devane.
Yeah, my name's Devane Prince. My wife, Kristen, and I live in Carmi, Illinois. Doesn't quite hold up to Nebraska, I don't think, but there are several cows there. So if you like beef, we could probably find you some. But yeah, so I grew up in Little McLeansboro, Illinois. Not much there either. Lived in DuQuoin for several years. Actually graduated from there. Made my way to Carbondale for college at SIU. Go Salukis. Where I met my wife, Kristen, at a very fine establishment called Sticks. It's a bar on the Strip. I'm not sure if it's still open. I think it is. Shout out to 80s Night if anyone's ever been there. But that's where our budding romance started. She's going to kill me for talking about that. But yeah, wow. That's where it happened. And so we got to know each other really well. It started dating, and we had our first son, Jax, within a year of being together. Didn't really plan that out well. But she grew up in a household with parents who had been together since high school, and so she'd only ever seen relationship that worked. And I kind of came from the opposite. I've been through multiple divorces. And I kind of had that in my mind that I was not going to have a kid go through that. So we were both hard-headed enough to make it work through that first year and then find out that we really do love each other. So we ended up moving to Knoxville, Tennessee. I was a manager of a retail store there. I got promoted from Carbondale to Knoxville after I graduated from SIU. And we lived away for a couple years. And I had this moment basically where I realized that God was real. Without going too deep into my story, it kind of tore down everything that I had thought. I thought I was a pretty smart guy. I'd always done really well in school. I guess I believed in science, if you would, and thought I had the whole world figured out. And God came and wrecked my world in a way that was devastating at the time, but I'm very thankful for now. So we both just decided, hey, we need to move home. We have a kid here. He needs to grow up around his family. We need to resettle. Where we're living and how we're living is not how we want to raise a kid anymore. And so we moved home, got plugged into a great church, got plugged into a great community. I found a couple jobs. In the meantime, kind of just got settled. And in the midst of that, like I said, we got plugged into a really great church. Mona DeVue, who is a dear friend of mine and Terry's as well, she had mentioned to me, hey, you should talk to my friend Terry. You're a really good communicator. I think you and him would get along well, and I think he has a spot at his business that I think would fit really well. And I was like, dude, I don't want to sell roofs. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a project consultant for Integrity Roofing, going on 3 years now. I was like, man, that does not sound fun. I called Terry, and I was like, I don't know. So I stuck with what I was doing and kind of floundered for a couple of years and realized that I was in a kind of a dead-end spot. And so I was on Indeed one night where all good job stories start, just searching around. And I felt like Holy Spirit stopped me in my tracks because there was an ad for a project consultant for Integrity Roofing. And I prayed about it, and Holy Spirit said, this is where you need to go. It's going to change your life. And so I talked to my wife about it, and I said, hey, this looks like a good opportunity. I think I'm going to go for it. So after talking to Terry, I found out that the job is pretty much 100% commission-based. And so when I told my wife that, she said, absolutely not. We're not doing that. You're at a safe spot right now. We're very comfortable. why on earth would you do that? And I continued to pray, and I continued to be pushed forward. And so after, I don't know, I think it was a 3-month process of talking to Terry and going through the interview process, where I decided that, hey, we're going to take this leap. And my wife was not excited, but I know Terry and I have talked about this, but she said, hey, I trust Devane. And if he really feels like this is where God is leading him, then this is what we're going to do. And so we dove in head first. And it's been, honestly, nothing but a blessing, a little bit of luck, a lot of good coaching. And I managed to be the pace setter or the top salesman last year for the company.
No small task.
Yeah, and it just
Awesome.
continually being invested in and continually growing as a person, as a man, as a father, getting opportunities to do podcasts and be a part of something like Man Up, which we're going to go into here in a minute. There's just no better spot for me. It just goes to show that God knew what he was doing when he planted that seed so many years ago, and I'm just glad that I was obedient enough to follow through, and it made me look good, but in reality, it was all him.
Man, isn't that so true, though? I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but he actually really knows what's going on. It's like he created us for a purpose and then helps lead us to that path. It's kind of ironic. Anyway, so Jeff, talk to the audience real quick, just about, I'm curious on your path. We're going to get into Man Up here in a minute, but you're in the life coach business. Devane was just talking about, he had some good coaching to get him to the point where he was at. Talk to us about the 3 most influential people in your life. How they impacted you, maybe who they are.
Oh, man, they're all right here at the top of my mind. So, yeah. Oh, man, how much time do we have?
Days.
There's 3 of the most influential people in my life. The first one that comes to mind was my teacher in 4th grade, which is the first year that I lived in California. When we moved from Omaha, Nebraska to Highland, California, Southern California, about 60 miles east of Los Angeles. Ted Miller, Mr. Miller, was my 4th grade teacher. As I look back on that time, there's lots of things I've reflected on and learned from that time that I didn't know in the moment, but he was just phenomenal. He was not only my teacher in 4th grade, but he got to be my teacher again in 6th grade, which was cool. I think at that time, had a, stable home that we were just moving into with my new stepdad. Awesome dude. But, Mr. Miller was just somebody that, I didn't really know the impact he was having on me until much later. In fact, in the last several years, I've tried diligently to find him, because I'm guessing that, he's in his, late 70s or 80s now. And I'd love to just be able to tell him about the impact that he's had. So if by any chance, Mr. Miller, you hear this, I just want to know that I want you to know the impact that you've had on me. But there was a couple of things. I remember one time he said, he told me, or maybe he told our class, I don't remember, but he said, don't ever let anybody tell you you're stupid. And I didn't have a ton of confidence as a kid. I'm growing in my confidence even still. But he was just a steadfast person that, he did things that engaged me. Every Monday through Friday, we would come in from our lunch recess, and we called it USSR and USSW, which is a little bit interesting because this is in 1987, still in the Cold War. But USSR was uninterrupted, sustained, silent reading. USSW was writing. And I still think about the creativity that I got to start to explore there, and how, that I still think about the stories and the things that he would do, the exercises that he would do with us. And just, I felt like he believed in me, and that was huge. I could go on about any of these guys for a long time, but in the interest of time, my friend Kevin, Kevin's in his mid 60s, and also, my friend Tim, Kevin and Tim, I actually met them on the same day. It was April 4th. In fact, we're coming up on the 20-year anniversary of that. But or April 11th of '04. And that was Easter that year. And, that was Easter that year. And I was at a new church. I had a brand new faith in Jesus that, I grew up in a church environment, as a kid, in that it was never personal or anything like that. I, went very astray for a long time, especially in my early 20s, and did a lot of things that I won't put on here in case my mom hears this. I met Kevin and Tim on the same day. And the reason I did, Tim was the pastor of that church. And I was new to that. And I met him that day, but it was Easter, and there was a great, great message that Tim had preached. And there was a phenomenal, music. It was worship that I had never experienced before in the church upbringing that I had. And I was sitting there after the service was over, and I just didn't want to leave the room. Like, I was single. I was just, usually on Sundays I was a, bachelor. I'd head back to my apartment. On the way, I'd go, stop and grab some groceries, and then I'd go home and I'd, have a, relaxing Sunday doing whatever. Well, I was sitting there with just kind of like leaning over, like sitting in my chair with my elbows on my thighs, just kind of leaning forward a little bit, kind of looking down. And a man came up in the row behind me and just put his hand on my back and just said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I turned around, and it was this man who I now know to be Kevin. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm awesome. Like, I just don't want to leave right now. Like, I'm like less than a month old in my faith. And it was crazy. Like, my first Easter as a believer, as a, true believer of Jesus Christ, as my Lord and Savior. And man, it was an incredible morning. And then later, Kevin had been, part of that church for a while. And later Tim came over and sat down, and both these guys are now, this was 20 years ago, they were my age. I'll be 46 in a month or so. And these guys are now in their mid 60s. So it's like, basically I am now the age that they were then. And just the way that both of these guys individually invested into my life, and what they've meant to me. And, Tim, like the pastor, like I grew up in a very traditional kind of, church setting. And, I always felt shame around that. Like I associate that experience, that childhood experience, with shame and guilt and condemnation. It wasn't something of love. And now I'm not trying to argue with my family or anybody else that brought me to that. I don't fault anybody for that. I just simply it didn't make sense to me. And some of it still doesn't make sense to me, but I felt like with Tim, I never had to clean up. I could use whatever, I could use language that most people may not use with their pastor. Like, I just felt completely accepted by both of these guys. And they both have they've spoken so much truth into my life and just encouragement. And then Kevin became more of we knew each other for, a few years, but a few years later there, I was just kind of, in a spot where, I was newly married, been married for 2.5 years. That was difficult. Devane had mentioned, like multiple divorces. I've been through that too. And, divorce is just an ugly thing. Doesn't matter how it happens or when it happens. It's just not, it's not the plan, but going through that, like, I've had some really awesome experiences because of that. And I've had some really not awesome experiences because of that. But I was in a place in my marriage, a little over 2 years married, and it wasn't going great. It really wasn't. Like, we didn't know how to communicate. I mean, we dated for, 2.5 years, better part of 2.5 years. We got married, and almost immediately upon getting home from our honeymoon, we were like, who are you? Like, I felt like both of us just had this, like, disconnect. And I just, I didn't have a whole lot of really, I didn't have spiritual community around me at that point. I didn't have anybody to really tell me or guide me, anybody that I was going to listen to anyway, I should say. Like, it needed to be a third party. And so, my friend Kevin, like he and I went to coffee. I invited him to coffee. We went and sat down for coffee, and I asked him at that point, this is the first time I'd ever done this in my life. I asked him if he would be willing to mentor me.
Greetings, gentlemen. It's me, Ben. You might remember me from Man Up 2023. Back in November, we all came out here and froze our buns off. We're doing it again, 2024, Man Up. And on April 18th, we are going to have this thing called Grub Fest 24. So we're going to have food. It's going to be at Celebrations Station. Celebrations Event Center. Marion, right? It's in Marion, Illinois. So that's going to be sweet. We're going to have food. We're going to have raffles. We're going to have merch that you won't be able to get any other time of the year. So come on out, join us. We're going to cast some vision for Man Up 2024. Bring the gang back together. Get all the faces that you remember from Man Up 2023 and hang out, have a good time. Can't wait to see you.
And he gave goosebumps every time I recall this. I still remember the chair I was sitting in, the chair he was sitting in. He said to me, I came here to ask you the same thing.
Wow.
And that was like incredible. And now clarifying, he wasn't asking me to mentor him. He was asking me if I'd be interested in him mentoring me. And that was just we entered into that. Like we just met weekly. We went through some different books. We did different stuff. And just the edification that gave me at that point in my life that still carries into everything that I do. Just having men speak truth into my life that were farther down the road for me, is why these are some of the most influential people that I first think of when I think about this. They're just foundational to who I am.
Yeah.
Still.
Man, what a God moment. We could camp out there for a minute. I think the part that I'd like to really pull out on that, though, is a lot of times for men, we won't ask for help or mentorship or coaching because for some weird reason we think it's a sign of weakness, and I can't admit that. And we talk about this all the time on the show. Your highest performers in any industry all have coaches. You're the best athletes, they have a coach. The best singers, they have a coach. The best actors, they have a coach, because they know there's value in someone else's perspective outside speaking into their life, maybe telling them things that other people won't tell them. And I think that moment obviously was a God moment prepared. God was speaking to somebody else to invest their time into your life. But it also spoke to you where, you were ready to kind of receive that. So, I mean, that's powerful. Yeah. And I think that's some of the magic that happens when we get to an event like Man Up. You start realizing that, man, as dudes, we all deal with the same stuff. And then suddenly you see a video or two of a guy pouring his heart out, on what he overcame, what he went through, and what he learned. And it's like, okay, game on. If he can do that, I can do that. And then suddenly we find ourselves in a place where we've never been. We're kind of scared to go there, to be quite honest. And then we walk away better because of it. So powerful stuff. So I want to switch gears just real quick. Devane, I want to ask you a question. Describe a significant failure that you've experienced and maybe the most important lesson you've learned from it. I know that's not an easy question, but I think there's so much we learn from failing that we can pass on as wisdom to somebody else. So maybe somebody listening doesn't have to go down the same road. Anything coming to mind?
Is that to me, Terry, or is that to Devane?
Well, I was asking Devane, and he's furrowed brow over here thinking.
Got one.
Oh, he's got one.
Let's talk about it.
I guess he was sorting through which one.
I don't fail very often, so it's kind of hard to think of a certain one, but there is a few I guess I could recall.
I had notes from your wife in case pride was an issue that I'd have a backup plan.
No, my pride got crucified many years ago, and I just try to live humbly. So, this was one that I'm not proud of. One of my lowest moments, so I kind of touched on how we moved back home without a plan from Knoxville, Tennessee. God started working in my life. So I had an opportunity. A man who owns a body shop in Carmi actually kind of knew my story. He was friends with my father-in-law. Probably got put up to it by my father-in-law because he was tired of us living with him, but that's besides the fact. But he visited me a couple weeks after we'd been home, and I was kind of getting my life together. It's one of those moments where it's like your kids don't ever want to take a bath because they don't know they're dirty. And so that's kind of how my journey with God was. He kind of turned the lights on, and I saw how dirty my life was. And so I was in the process of getting cleaned up, if you will. And this guy came to me, and he basically said that, hey, I've got a business here that I'm looking to retire from in the next 10 years, and I need someone to hand it down to. And so I want you to come on and kind of help lead my team. And it was a body shop, so I was doing some estimating and overseeing the business. And so I was like, man, I would be silly not to jump at this opportunity. It's a very successful business. And it just did not go well at all. Our personalities did not mesh. And I would like to think I'm pretty easy to get along with, and I'm a pretty teachable person. That's one thing I think that has gotten me as far as I have. But I think after doing this gentleman who's a great man, great community, he does a lot for the community, but I think he realized that he did not want to let his hands off the business at all. And so I was kind of in this position where I was like waiting to be mentored, and he was waiting for me to kind of jump up and take the reins, I think. And so there was just this stagnant position there where I was waiting for him and he was waiting for me, and I didn't want to overstep my boundaries. I didn't know anything about cars or body shops, so I was just like, all right. In my mind, I was like, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. And in his mind, he was like, okay, I've put this opportunity in front of you.
Show me what you
Show me what you got. And I was still regaining my confidence from having kind of felt like I got my whole foundation wrecked by God. And so I wasn't great spiritually. I was still being built up there. My marriage wasn't super strong. I wasn't paying for a house. I wasn't really providing. I was living with my father-in-law. And now looking back, I can see it was a good thing because it was completely, like I said, humbling. But I did not jump at the opportunity when I had the chance. Now looking back, I would have done it totally different. I still don't know if that relationship would have worked because he wasn't really ready to let go of the business or to do anything different than he's always done. He'd been very successful doing the business how he had, and that's amazing. But for me, I'm pretty innovative, and I like to try new things, and so it just didn't go well. So when I did have a few moments of opportunities to kind of try to change that trajectory of that relationship, it didn't go well. It was basically a hard no, and then so kind of got disinterested, and then it kind of was just a stagnant place for me. I was getting a salary, and we were doing fine, and I'd kind of settled into a position there, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I wasn't doing what he thought I should be doing. And so I walked in, and there were no conversations leading up to this, like, how do you think it's going? This is where I want you to do. This is what I would like to see you go. It was just a blindside. I walked in, and he said, well, I don't think this is working. Here's a couple months severance. Thank you for your time.
Oh.
And I got fired by like the nicest guy in Carmi. My wife jokes about me, like, you got fired by the nicest man in Carmi. And
put that on your resume.
Yeah. And oh man, it hurt because I felt like I'd finally got a good opportunity, and I was getting my feet underneath me, and I was building this life for my family, and I just got blindsided. And so I felt like a failure because I had failed. But in that moment, he was very generous with this severance. So it wasn't like we were worried about buying groceries for the next couple of months. I had enough to live on until I, got a different game plan. But having reflected on that, I realized that there were so many opportunities for me to just do something rather than do the perfect thing. And I didn't do it. And I kind of put the blame on him for not casting the vision for me, when in reality the ball was in my court, and I could have taken it and ran with it. And had I taken more initiative and just pursued harder instead of waiting for direction, I think I could have been successful better than what I was. I don't think I would have been blindside fired, but it showed me that we control what's in front of us. And so I really had to learn to take ownership for how that went. And my next opportunity I got was in sales, and I I took that and I ran with it, and I became the top salesman at that place. And learning from that failure and realizing that it wasn't final, that my family still loved me, that I was still going to come home to my wife and son. At the time, we didn't have our 2 daughters yet. Still had a place to live. And up until that point, I had kind of defined myself, and my whole personality was built around my job and finding success in that. And that's kind of a recurring theme in my life that the God's had to teach me and walk me out of. But I realized that I was still me, even after I lost my job, and that it was okay. And so it was a blessing, but it still hurts, and it still kind of, I don't like to lose. I still don't like to lose, and I felt like I'd really just lost.
Yeah, it was a practice game.
It was.
If you'd won it there, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
Amen.
So, yeah, man, that's good stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about the Man Up. So either one of you guys jump in, but I'm curious. I want you to tell the audience about your road to the Man Up Adventure Camp last year. Jeff, you want to jump in and just tell us first? Like,
sure,
how
man.
in the
Thank
world
you.
did you end up here, and why?
Yeah. So I ended up there from Lincoln, Nebraska, because one of our mutual friends, Terry, had invited me to accompany him to Man Up. That was the first time it hit my radar. I looked into it. The person that invited me had some credibility with me, so I said yes. They had some family things come up that prevented them from being there, but I was like, well, I didn't necessarily commit to saying yes to him, to our friend, but instead I had committed to saying yes to Man Up because from what I looked into it, I was like, yeah, this is something that I think would be cool to go to. And so I said yes anyway, and I went on my own, and honestly, it was phenomenal. I didn't really know what I was walking into. Terry, you were the only voice I'd ever heard, the only person I'd ever met, and that was only virtually at that point. And so, getting, just driving in the parking lot, getting out of my truck and knowing who you were before we even got out of that parking lot, I had a half dozen new friends, and little did I know what was going to come about with those people in the next 48 hours. But an absolutely phenomenal experience, and worth every ounce of the 9-hour drive to and the 9-hour drive home. At the end of that,
I had forgot all about that. The gentleman that invited you didn't man up, and he didn't show up.
Yeah,
because I know he's going to listen to this. So there's the shot of Val to show up this year. But I'd totally forgot that part of it. So that yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you followed through. And I know that you have an extensive background. I think right before you came, you went to the Grand Canyon and did something crazy.
I did. October 6th of last year, coming off a broken ankle a year and a half ago, I had a friend of mine. This is the power of being invited. I think that when we're invited, then it's on us. We got to decide, right? Like, we can get invited to Man Up and we can show up or not, and also on this journey that you're referring to is I have a friend of mine. He does a lot of running. He finds joy in running. I don't know how we're friends because I find zero joy in running.
I'm with you.
But November of 22, he had invited me to go. He's like, hey, me and a couple guys are gonna go and run across the Grand Canyon rim to rim. It's about 24, 25 miles, 2 miles, of elevation change within there. So it's, that's not anything I want to be doing. And so I was like, well, yeah, I'll think about that. And in my head, I'm like, there's no way I'm thinking about that. I'm already done thinking about it. 3 weeks later, I had a broken ankle, had surgery on that ankle. And I spent most of December and half of January just laying on my couch. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out how to do this 10 months away. And so I said yes to it and went and ran from the south rim of the Grand Canyon to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. We did that, started at 5 a.m. and got done at 4:11 p.m., so just over 11 hours. And, yeah, it's amazing. When you think something is impossible, have you tried it? Have you tried it?
And you were a little bit of an outdoorsman. I know you were in my campsite, and you had all the iron cooking utensils. You were kind of ready, and I know that is not Devane's story.
Yeah, I love being outside. My wife and I both love being outside. That's like where we do our, a lot of our vacations. Some of my favorite vacations are places that my cell phone doesn't work, and so Man Up fit that, because guys, if you're listening to this and you haven't been to Man Up, you're going to leave your phone in your truck. And you're going to be, when you get back to your phone, you might have 6 million messages, but you are going to be so glad that you left it in your truck. So, just being able to really disconnect and focus on being present is a tremendous gift.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we'll definitely talk about this year, because, man, the power of the pause. And our life is so busy, we do not pause. And I think just what you said, just the mere fact of leaving that phone that seems to possess your life away for 48 hours, once you get through the withdrawal symptoms of that, man, it starts putting everything in perspective. So Devane, talk to us about your road to the Man Up last year.
Yeah, I just got to say, I have also broken my ankle and had surgery, and the fact that you ran that within 10 months, you said, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I let it heal.
Yeah, but still, that is, talk about manning up. That's impressive, because it took me a long time to bounce back from that. So kudos to you. And who knew, we both broke our ankles, so we were destined to be friends. So yeah, my
we
journey.
Both have huge biceps.
Yeah, my journey to Man Up. I am not an outdoorsman by any stretch of the means. I believe before I left, I had all my stuff packed up, and my wife looked at me and she said, Are you going to make it? Thanks for the vote of confidence, babe. Yeah, I don't know. I hope. I was like, I'm with my adventure captain was Caleb Gwaltney, and he knows what he's doing outdoors. I'm like, Caleb's with me. I don't think he'll let me die. He'll have to replace me on his sales team, so he has vested interest in keeping me alive. So I'll be honest. There was a moment, I was just telling Terry about this a little bit ago. There was a moment leading up to that week where I was like, I do not want to do this. And I do, one of my things in my life is doing hard things and putting myself out of my comfort zone. Maybe a lesson learned from getting fired of being in my comfort zone is that I was like, I'm going to continually push myself. So I was like, I committed to this. So I committed, I'm going. But I did not want to go. And I was having a conversation with God in prayer, and he said, buddy, you're going to have to man up. And I was like, okay, we're doing this. So I kind of went into it with both feet. And I was like, all right, we're going to make this work. And you know what? I survived. And by the end of it, man, it was so good. Like you said, really pausing and putting my phone in the truck for a weekend. Got young kids, work in sales, so my phone is constantly connected to me. And I was worried about being disconnected and like what I was going to miss out on and like how much work I was going to have to come back to. But when Terry was talking about that, I just got this image, and I'm not a race car guy by any means, but I know like when you're in NASCAR, there is a time in the race where you have to take a pit stop and get your tires changed. Because if you don't, you'll end up getting passed. And it's like, it seems counterintuitive because you're pulling off the racetrack and stopping racing to get your tires changed, and everyone else is still going. But taking that break actually makes you faster, and you end up farther along than what you would have been had you not take that break. And so for me, Man Up, not only was a chance to get out of my comfort zone and get into the outdoors and disconnect, but it was like a pit stop. It was like a tire change. It was getting around other men and getting my cup filled, but also able to tell my story and kind of share a little bit about that. There's something so empowering about sharing your testimony with other men, because you find out you're not alone. There's people that have gone through something similar, or they've gone through stuff. And the enemy wants you to feel isolated and broken and feel like you're the only one dealing with what you're dealing with. And when that happens, you just tend to hide it, and then it just begins to eat you alive, and it's just not good. So,
there's something about finding purpose in your pain that brings a sense of fulfillment like nothing else. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Once the Bible tells us to find joy in trials of all kinds. And once you have that perspective flip, that when you're going through something, it's so hard when you're in the moment, but you're going through something super hard and you're saying, this is working for me. not against me. Just like that weight on the bar when Jeff's getting his big biceps, when he's curling, he doesn't get big biceps by curling a little bit of weight. He puts a lot of weight on the bar, and the more resistance is there, the harder it is in the moment, and the more it probably hurts, but the bigger that muscle becomes. So just going through that and realizing that you can share that story and help others grow and become stronger through that, it becomes an empowering moment. It's almost like I tell the enemy, like, you better quit putting me through stuff because I'm just going to use it. I'm just going to use it to strengthen other men. So you can keep throwing it at me, but I'm just going to keep bouncing back.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys realize that, man, there's a message in my mess. My mess can be used as a message of hope for somebody else if I'm just willing to talk about it with somebody else. And I know you manned up and did that, no pun intended, when you did it on a video and just kind of told a little bit of your journey. And that just set the stage for other guys to, like, man, if he can talk about that, I can talk about that. And it become very, very impactful. I'm curious for both you guys, coming into camp, what were your expectations?
Jeff, you want me to go ahead and go first?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'd been praying. I knew I had committed to this long before it happened. And my main goal was to disconnect enough to where God could download my purpose for me. And that's something that is kind of fluid and it changes. But I really wanted to be like, God, what is my purpose? And I need to unplug long enough to where I can sit still and in quiet enough to where I could hear it. And he gave me a verse, Acts 26:18, and he said, this is your verse, and this is kind of what I wrote down in my Bible, and I put it in my own words, but essentially I might get this kind of wrong, but he says to open the eyes of the blind and to turn them from the power of darkness into light, and from the power of Satan into the power of God. So that's my purpose in this life, is to help open blind eyes and to show them light from darkness and to turn them from the power of Satan into the power of God. And so since then, I've gone into every interaction I have with somebody. It's like, I can help them. I can help open their eyes. I can help turn them, because I was once blind, and I was once living in darkness and sin, and I was once deceived and in the power of Satan. And he did that for me, and I've made that journey, and that journey was hard, but he taught me a lot of things through it. So if I can just take a little bit of that pain and a little bit of that heartache that I had to go through and help show somebody else the path to the light, man, now everything changed.
Yeah, that's so good. Jeff, what kind of expectations from Lincoln, Nebraska on that 9-hour drive did you have when your buddy stood you up?
Yeah, he stood me up, but he didn't. It was totally acceptable. But I really had so few expectations. I was like, Terry, I'm texting you beforehand. I'm like, I can fill my whole truck with everything we need. Like, who needs what? Like, we need, more gear, more pans, more cast iron, more tents. What do we need? We built up a small arsenal here at our house, and I was like, I just want to go camping. I'm thinking November. In November, you don't camp in Nebraska. I mean, it's very rare that you do that, but it ended up just being, it was a perfect weekend for it. I really didn't, I didn't know much of anything. Like, I really didn't. I went into it, like I said, on an invitation from a trusted friend, who trusts you, Terry, and you and I had some getting to know you sessions and just times that we got to talk. And, I just went into it and I was like, I'm just going to go see what's going on. I'm going to go just be. I'm going to go into it with an open mind. I'm going to go into it and just see, what there might be for me, and just be aware of it with no expectations. If I drive home on Sunday and all I did was go camp outside, it will be worth the trip. And it was so much more than that. It really was. I mean, the friendships, the relationships that got real deep real quick, and just in real, like really real. Devane had alluded to it earlier. Devane was one of the people that shared, some of his story on one of the videos, and man, it was just powerful to hear, these grown men that have these blue collar jobs, they're, up on roofs and stuff. And, nobody's super polished. It's not a bunch of people out there in their designer stuff, but like just showing up, just being ready to be there. And everybody's, got an attitude of just like, I didn't know how well connected anybody else was. I knew I was an outsider, but, it turns out there was a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life there that are all there, and we're all one. We're all part of it. We're all, laughing and having fun. We're, in the tent, having a awesome connecting experience, whether it's through worship music or through a message that's being shared or something like that, or even just the activities, man. I won't give away any of the stuff in case some of that's coming back, but just the activities that we got to do that got everybody out of their comfort zone, laughing and having fun, and also just building a little bit of a team element was just it just exceeded expectations. Maybe because I didn't have many, but I remember driving home that Sunday, and I spent most of the drive, driving in, watching the sunset as I drove, west across Missouri. And I just left my music. Usually I listen to music or I listen to podcasts or I'm on the phone with people while I'm driving. I'm like, I don't want to waste this time. I'm like, let's do something cool with it. And I just sat in silence and I just drove. And I just thought, and it was what I needed. It was just time to process everything that, kind of got brought up at Man Up. And brought up, I say that in a good way. Like it was stuff that's, needed to be dredged up a little bit because it's not adding any flavor to the pot right now. So
what would you guys say that people listening, if a man was listening and was thinking about coming and then he decided for whatever reason I'm not going to be able to make it, what would he have missed? What would you have missed? Either one of you. If you'd have listened to any one of those reasons why not to come, or just life in general. Life gets busy. We're joking about a mutual friend we have. I mean, he had a grandson that was born. He had a couple of other life things that were happening. It was very understandable why he couldn't come. And I really think, looking back, he was used strategically for us to be able to meet. He had full intentions of being here. God already knew he wasn't going to be here, but he used him for what he needed to use him for that year and connected us. But what would you guys have missed had you not come?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is besides the deep connection with guys that I didn't even know before I showed up. It was laughing, man. I just remember one time we were running our campfire. Oh my gosh, Kevin Turner is just sharing the story, and oh my gosh, I almost fell in the fire. I think you did too, Terry. Like just laughing. Just laughing that hard. Like, when's the last time you really laughed? Like, to where it hurt, where I was like, I need to stop laughing. This is a lot. That alone was just so needed for me.
Proverbs talks about that. It says a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. There's so much truth to that. There's medical studies that prove that out, but yet we don't take the time to do it sometimes.
Yeah. That moment is one of the key things I've recalled that, so many times. Like that was key for me. But even just, there was one, just being around a campfire. And it's like, if there's somebody that's listening to this, that's never heard of it, or that's the thing about going and probably like, that's not for me. Kind of like I probably was when I got invited to the Grand Canyon. I was like, there's no way. But sitting around the fire with other men that are they're broken. We've all messed up. We've all done, things that we regret. We're all making our first pass through life, and just being able to hear other people. I think for me, it meant I'm not alone. I'm not alone. It might, my story might not be like his, but I'm not alone. Like I can safely go to that person that I've known for 20 hours and tell them some of my crap and not be judged for it.
Yeah.
And that's not a common thing, like in our world anymore.
We so need that as men.
I don't even know if it ever has. Yeah.
Yeah. Devane, if you look back, was there a big aha moment you had at camp?
I think that what I was just talking about with my purpose and like, man, I am on this planet for something bigger than myself. But in order to get to that point where I could hear God clearly on that and write it down, I had to disconnect. I had to put the phone away. I had to take a couple days away from my family as much as I love them, because getting away from them for those couple days just made me value them that much more and be that much of a father and a husband when I came back. And then there's just such value in doing things you don't want to do or that are out of your comfort zone, like going camping whenever you're not an outdoorsman. And then, like Jeff said, just being around other men that are doing the same things you are. They're being a husband, they're being a father, they're trying to be an excellent employee, and just like these guys all want to go back and be a better version of themselves, and we're all going to get to do that together. And it just, oh man, it's so valuable. You can only redline for so long, and I'm guilty of it so often, that where I just try to push and push and push and try to achieve the next goal and to go on to the next thing. But you can only do that so long before you just blow up your motor. And so for me, that was really just a time of refreshment and kind of a reset, almost a recalibrate of my life of like, okay, this is what's important. This is what God has put me on this planet for. Now I can go back and really have a target and a goal and shoot for it, rather than just aimlessly trying to do everything at once as fast as I can.
Yeah, that's good. You know, to play on your NASCAR analogy a while ago, I was just sitting here listening to you, and it's like, man, we're all so busy. We probably don't have time in our schedules to go do a 2-day weekend that seems to be just for us. Mm-hmm. And I think you almost have to flip the switch a little bit. It's like, this is not about what it's going to cost me. It's about the investment that I'm willing to make. Mm-hmm. And I would just encourage the guys that are listening, if you'll view this as an investment is something that appears to cost you something in the moment, but it has a payback over a long period of time that keeps paying back and paying back. And that's really what this is. You need to make that investment. And to your analogy a while ago, this is kind of like your pit stop. You know, you may be redlining. You may be looking as like, man, I know I had these kids, but man, I don't know what to do with them. You know, who are these aliens? I mean, they're frustrating me. Or, you know, I love my wife, but man, I didn't realize I sucked as a husband so bad. I'm about ready to pull my hair out. You know, I mean, we could go on and on and on. You know, I thought I had a career, but it feels like a job that I hate. You know, and you get to that point, you need to pull off the road. You know, you need to get into the pit stop. And that's what this would do for you. It would give you an opportunity. I mean, yet not to pull the curtain back too much, but there's one part of the weekend where last time we just discharged all the guys after we had a talk into the big tent. The band had played. And it's like, take your journal, go out in the woods, go by the creek, go out in the field, and just spend 1 hour and don't talk to anybody and just write. Write what you hear. I mean, when's the last time anybody did that? And sometimes it's not so much that, you know, we think, well, God just doesn't speak. No, we just don't listen. We have to put ourselves in a position to hear what he's already saying. And I think, you know, one word from God can change your life forever. And putting 48 hours in your schedule and rearranging your calendar, I can promise you it's worth it. Would you concur with that, Jeff?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm certain that this coming year in October it's going to be different than it was last year. There's going to be different people around the fire. There's going to be different people there. There's going to be people that are there for the first time, people that, you know, they didn't make it back. But I think, you know, as you look out, you know, we tend to, you know, when somebody says like, oh, I don't have time, it's like, okay, or I don't have money, or I can't afford that. Well, the thing is, like, if I can't afford that, maybe I can't afford this, but if I look around in the rest of my life and I see my Netflix subscription and my Amazon subscription and all these things that are nickel and diming me, like those don't look like a big expense, but I'm choosing those. So I'm choosing to afford those things. I guess the thing here would be to choose to afford yourself the time.
Yeah.
And if you come back and it was a waste of time, call me. I'll refund you. It's worth it. Like it's you know, you gotta choose to make the time. And I mean, this is over, you know, this is 7 months away right now. Like, make the time. If you're hearing this, make the time. Put it on your calendar. October 24th, 25th, or 25th, 26th, wherever that weekend is. Like, just book it.
Yeah, 25th through the 27th. Some of you are going to hear this even before. We're kind of having a little get together prior to that in April. And, you know, maybe you're on the fence. April 18th, 6 o'clock, Celebration Center, Marion, Illinois. For some of you guys that are more regional, you know, you can come out, hear a little bit more about camp. You right now can go online, obviously, and you can sign up. The tickets are cheaper to do that now. You know, the more you plan ahead, there's a price to be a procrastinator. So you don't want to put that off to the end. But yeah, to Jeff's point, man, there's plenty of time. Make the investment. It has the opportunity to change your life. Talk to me, guys, about what does it mean to man up? I was to ask you that. How would you define that in your own words?
Devane, feel free, bro.
That's a tough one. My wheels are spinning. For me, manning up is...
God told you to man up.
He did, yeah. And he didn't give me a set in stone definition per usual. He just gives me one thing, and I've got to act on it before I get any more details. One of my favorite things he does. But for me to man up, I think it's to put aside all your apprehension and put aside all of your excuses in order to take the time to invest in yourself to be a better man and a husband and a father.
Jeff, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I'm thinking right now, and again, hopefully this is not a spoiler if you're thinking about coming or whatever, but there was an exercise, Terry, that you had us do. It wasn't really even an exercise. It was just an opportunity that you invited us into with the little plastic army guy around our fire. And we got, you know, we took that and we shared what that represented to us. And then we threw it in the fire. And that was symbolic of just throwing away my boyishness. Like, there's still parts of me that are affected by, I think with all of us for our childhood, but like throwing away your boyishness, moving, you know, we're not supposed to stay in third grade forever.
Putting away childish things.
Like be who you needed when you were little. Be who other people need of you right now. And, you know, I fail at this miserably. I'm not by any stretch claiming to have this cornered. But to just level up.
Yeah.
You know, make it do the actions. Like, sure, big trucks are macho, guns are macho, all this, you know, stuff that's got testosterone written all over it. But have you ever cried around other men and hugged them and just wept? To me, that's a lot more macho than getting the big F-250. It's all, you know, 50-inch lift and all that stuff. It's like, that's all great, but you're just putting up a front there. We all do it. I do it. I recognize areas that I do it, but I think just getting rid of your boyishness, growing up, no longer, you know, being a victim of your circumstance, your upbringing, or your history. Like, just no excuses.
Yeah.
No excuses.
You said something a while ago, and I just heard somebody say it. I'm trying to recall who said it, but it was so true. It said, be the man you needed when you were a kid. That's manning up. And there's so much truth to that. What would either one of you guys say to someone who maybe is contemplating coming to camp for the first time, and maybe they're not even an experienced camper or they're not even an outdoorsman? What would you say to that person? Either one of you, or both of you.
Just do it.
Stop thinking about all the reasons why you shouldn't and why you can't, and start thinking about all the reasons why you need to, and what kind of return on that investment it's going to be.
Yeah.
Be a longer list, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, how do you want to be remembered when your life's over here on earth? Just go deep.
Oh. Ooh. Man.
Or maybe say it like this. What kind of mark do you want to leave that can't be erased?
Yeah. It is my desire that people in my life know that I love them and know that I care for them, and that I want to leave them better than I found them. I want to be able to share whatever gifts I have and not make excuses for not. Getting back to Devane's point, like, don't look for reasons to not share your gifts. Look for reasons to share them. I've been uniquely gifted in ways that you haven't. You have unique gifts that I don't have. I just want to be somebody that adds value and contributes much more than I consume and take away.
Dane, anything to add to that?
Man, that's so good. It's so deep. Yeah, I want to be known as a great father and a husband, someone who loved his family and protected his family fiercely. But there was I think it was on my birthday last year, one of my best friends reached out to me to tell me happy birthday, and he said, one thing that I've seen in you in your life that I admire the most is your resilience. And I never really thought of myself as a resilient person. But he's seen everything I've been through from my childhood up into where I'm at now. And it seemed like he said that you've had every excuse to be a poor husband or a poor father, and you've seen every way you can do it that is wrong, and you've taken that and turned it and allowed it to make you a stronger person and not keep you down, but in fact make you stronger to help other people. And so if I can use a little bit of that pain and a little bit of anything that I've went through, any kind of suffering, and help others that are going through the same thing, the Bible says we are comforted so we can comfort others. Man, I think there's just so much value in there, and I think that's part of the puzzle of my purpose in this life is to help others through what I've learned through what I've been through.
So good. Gentlemen, that's what it means to man up. Don't use life as excuses. Excuses, nothing but a reason stuffed into a lie. Own it, man up, take responsibility for it, change it. All right, we're going to go into our rapid fire as we wind this thing up today. We'll shift gears here, a little bit lighter, fun. You guys jump in at will. We'll go quick. Rather have a night in or a night out?
Night in.
Night out. Out all day. Too much food in this town to eat. Yeah, we got to get out.
Vacation in the mountains or at the beach?
No.
Beach for me.
Two biggest pet peeves?
Oh.
For me, the number one, I think, is excuses. Like, there's so much value in taking ownership. Even if it doesn't seem like you should have to take ownership, there is ownership to be taken. And I say that to myself because that is one of the things that I had to really learn and grow in. And so anytime I hear myself start to revert back to that, I'm like, oh, too much. I've listened to too much Jocko. You got to take ownership and you got to own it.
Yeah. So
Jeff?
my pet peeve is when I'm either driving or walking or running or just doing something outside and there's not even a crosswalk, but the car stops and sits there and waves me on. It's like if you just kept driving, it would have been fine. It's a really petty pet peeve, but just keep going. Keep going. You don't have to get your nice deed done with me. Just keep going. There's no crosswalk here. I'm waiting. So that's one of mine for sure.
You had to
I
eat.
probably have more.
If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Steak and potatoes.
Oh,
Number one answer on the show.
Is it?
man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna do this. This is every Saturday morning we do English muffin, bacon, eggs, and fruit. And I love it. And I'm always like, this is amazing. There's a lot of stuff I love to eat, but that's the first thing that came to mind. So
I'm getting hungry. It's good stuff. Listen, guys, man, I had a great time on the show today. I think you guys have taken a few moments, added a ton of value. Hopefully you've given our audience something to think about, challenge them. Appreciate you sharing your stories. I think, it's hard sometimes to share, from our pain, maybe even from a little bit of our failure. But I think some of the most valuable lessons to others come from that. And, you can be real and connect with people. I think that opens the door for lives to be changed. I appreciate the opportunity even to get to know you a little bit better. So great having you both on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Guys, listen, legacy is not what you leave to people. It's what you leave in people. Go out this week, leave a mark that can't be erased, and we'll see you next time on the Man Up Podcast. Hey, Terry Gwaltney here from the Man Up Podcast. Listen, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you supporting the podcast, listening to it. We hope it's adding a ton of value to your life. Also want to ask you to do us a favor. If you could like and share this podcast on wherever you consume your social media content, whether that be YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, we would appreciate it. It just helps us get the word out so we can help more people. And maybe you've never experienced the Man Up Adventure Camp that we do in October. You can check out our Facebook or our website, manup-camp.com. Once again, I want to thank you for listening to the Man Up Podcast, and we'll see you soon.